On this episode of Star Trek Universe, we are talking about Star Trek Picard 206, 2 of 1, right after these words from our mystery sponsors.
Welcome to Star Trek Universe, the Star Trek podcast, where you get to listen in on this continuing conversation that two lifelong fans have been having since they were, 6 years old.
Yeah, man.
My name's Matthew Carroll.
I'm David C. Robertson.
So let's just dive in, man. We kind of did a little pre-talk on this one, which we normally don't do. We normally jump right in.
We normally don't.
But I think we were both a little aghast at how much we didn't like this episode.
I was. And you know what? I'll tell you this. I'll say this before we get into the episode. This is like the cherry on top of a Star Trek shit sandwich for this week.
Ooh.
Yes, for First Contact Day, it started out great because they dropped that trailer for Star Trek Picard Season 3 that teased that, like, pretty much like all the main cast members of TNG were coming back for Season 3. And I'm like, hell yeah, that's exciting news. like a real
Sungbot from the 22nd century. Hell yeah.
Yeah. And so they also had... So then they dropped the... Star Trek the Motion Picture in 4K, the remastered 4K thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, well, this looks like it's in 4K. That's fine. They didn't really update most of the special effects, and that's fine, because I guess they wanted to stick with, like, they didn't want to go, like, full George Lucas on it. But, like, there were scenes where they, like, replaced the whole, like, back wall with a window, and in the process erased Kirk and McCoy's faces. Like, it was just so blurred out. And I'm like, if you're going to advertise this thing and do this thing, don't, like, make it look worse.
Right. And you said you have the DVD. I saw your tweet about how you have the DVD, and it doesn't have those problems.
It does not have those problems. And they also didn't, they just kept the same window and just added nacelles in the back. In the window, so it just looks fine. It looks absolutely fine. I have the Blu-rays of the original without the nacelles. I have the DVD with the nacelles. None of that looks like shit. But now they've decided, we have to replace the entire wall and make the whole thing a window, and it just looks awful.
It sounds like utter carelessness, which is like the thing that I can't stand more than anything in all this geek media. They know how much we care. So they know they're going to put something out and we are going to care about it immensely.
Yep.
And then they put out a thing that is so carelessly put together. And I think often writing is that way. It's like, oh, there's a big plot hole. You didn't care. Like if there's a big plot hole, you just didn't care. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like that drives me nuts when writers don't care, when directors don't care. It just drives me absolutely nuts. You're not even just making this thing make sense. And it goes back to my love for continuity and stuff. It's just like, I'm looking for, like, I'm watching for flaws. I'm not looking for flaws, but I'm watching for them. And then I just see flaws all over the place. And I'm like, you just didn't care. And that shows. Yeah. And that's a bummer.
Speaking of which, Star Trek is now getting into the NFT game. And which I think is interesting because it's clear that they're trying to jump onto a bandwagon. And it's clear that they're not trying to make any, like, solid value point with it. Like, they are selling these NFTs, like these packs, quote unquote, for $250. But they're not paying an artist to make the NFTs. They are doing algorithmically created starships that do not look like the starship classes, speaking that they're claiming they are, speaking of continuity. Like, it's just like random, really fuzzy, shitty looking digital art.
Yeah.
And charging a ton of money for it. And this is like even going beyond the notion that, like, they don't even know who their audience is, man. Like, they are being blasted on Twitter because of angry Star Trek fans who are like, how are you doing this to the environment? Why would you do this to the environment? Because NFTs are supposedly really bad for the environment. I don't know a lot about them. I've read that they're bad. I don't know.
Well, the entirety of blockchain is bad for the environment.
Yeah.
Because it's basically just a bunch of computing power doing the same job that like a paper ledger could do. But it's like, there's a purpose behind it. But if you're just creating these like little nuggets of value, it's just no different than any other, like, it's just a Ponzi scheme, man. I think, and like, I'm not saying you can't make money in it. If you know what you're doing, you can probably make money in it. You can probably buy a thing at the right time and sell it at the right time. But like, it's inherently a pyramid scheme that is like, somebody sells something, it might go up, it might go down, but eventually these are not worth anything. There's no value here.
Yeah. That's what I feel in my soul. But
if they had like this might be valuable. If they made an NFT thing for Star Trek and they only released one of every ship.
Yeah.
And it was like very limited, and it was like you as a Star Trek fan could be the one person to own the Enterprise A or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, it's just you are the only person who will own that ship. That would be valuable as hell, and a lot of people would want it. But if you're just like doing the monkey thing where you're like combining a bunch of different elements and you're like, hey, algorithmically created, there's an endless supply of these.
See, it's hard to say.
It is. Algorithmically created things. It's like these monkeys.
Yeah.
It's BS, man. It's BS.
Yeah. So to get through all of that and realize, I was like, well, at least I have this week's episode of Picard, and I hated it.
Yeah.
And I wasn't even in a bad mood. It was just a bad episode.
It was.
Which is surprising because it's Jonathan Frakes directing.
Oh, was it? I was about to look up who wrote and directed this one because it's bad. It's bad. I think it's poorly directed. It's
Cindy Apple and Jane Maggs written by, but directed by Jonathan Frakes. Poorly edited.
Yeah. I mean, from the very beginning, like it sets me up for failure with an episode when you start it with a flash forward of someone getting hurt and then go 34 minutes earlier. Because here's the thing. There is no chance Picard is dying on the ground in episode 5 of season 2 of Picard when you just announced season 3 with all of his friends coming back.
Yeah.
There's no chance. So there's no danger here. Have Girardi like falling down, coughing up blood, and then I know that she has the Borg inside of her. Like, that's a scary thing. Almost anyone else on the show could have had this moment, and I could have been scared. And I just generally don't like the flash forward thing.
I don't either.
It's a cheap way to generate danger, and it just didn't work. And I'm already so interested in the story. I'm so interested in the fact that the Borg Queen wants Girardi. I'm so interested in Picard and his ancestors and his family and all this stuff. And then like to have that just mean nothing to this episode, and just have it just honestly. Jonathan Frakes is a great director, but I think he does really well with the action-y episodes. And I can totally see him looking at this episode and going like, we need to spice it up a little bit. Of course, I'm fully putting Riker's personality on the character of Jonathan Frakes.
Right. I mean, I think he is Jonathan Frakes, honestly. Like, I don't think there's a difference. I really don't. But I've said it before on this show. I feel like when they begin an episode in media res, it's just basically saying, by the way, what's about to come is going to be really boring for a really long time.
That's exactly right.
And we've got to catch your attention.
And you know what? This wasn't. It literally was like I was super interested in the Borg part of this, and the story starts with the Borg part. And the thing after he gets hurt, where they're in the doctor's, he's not going to die. Her going into his brain and the danger, and the Raffi's fearing Laris clone going into his what's her name? It's a word. I remember it's a word. Nabeen.
Talene.
Talene?
This is
they called her Talon. They called her Talon because I remember it being like,
is it Talon?
Yeah, they called her Talon because I remember being like, really? Talon? Okay. Scratchy.
I don't remember it in the episode. I'm just like looking over on Memory Alpha.
Yeah, it's Talon. and I'm like, what? Because I remember it sounded, it was a homophone for some other word. So
you're a homophone. I ain't scared of no sounds.
I really wanted to make a homophobe joke, so thank you for that.
How you doing?
Talon's a homophone. That's weird. She comes from this advanced race. You'd think they would have selected for that when they. Okay.
Oh God.
So I really wanted to like this, and I really would have liked what they did. Like, there's nothing in this episode that I hate what they did, but it's like the weight they gave it all. And then I do not like insulting actors. I really don't. Because I think we all have love for certain actors, and I absolutely love Brent Spiner because of his performance as Data. I don't necessarily think it's like their fault sometimes. Sometimes it's just the writing, the editing, you know. I agree. But I personally felt like nothing in his performance felt real to me. Mm-hmm. Like his like falling apart in front of his daughter and drinking booze. It felt like Brent Spiner wanted to do something different than Data. So they gave him this to do. And it's not in his wheelhouse. This is not in his wheelhouse. And I just felt like this isn't what, I don't know. I hate to say it, but like it felt like really bad acting to me. The whole Brent Spiner of this whole episode. Like, cool.
I do disagree. I think he is perfectly within his wheelhouse, but all the shit he was saying was just like his whole storyline where it's just like, I'm going to, like, he acted like really sinister, really like serious. He almost had Picard escorted from the place, and I was like, cool. And then all of a sudden he's just in a car and Q's like, you have to do it. And he's just like, I'm going to run her over. And like, there were so many weird beats. Like the whole episode felt off. Like he tries to run over Renee, winds up running over Jean-Luc. Then like he shows up at his house, and his daughter acts like he just looks like he is beaten to hell and back. She's like, what the hell happened to you? And I'm like, he unbuttoned his shirt. Like he looked fine. It was just so weird. And then he like sat down and started rambling all this crazy shit. Yeah. And then for the first time ever, she decides to like look up who her dad is on the internet.
She Googled him for the first time. Like she's an indoor kid, man. She's trapped inside all the time. And it's the first time she's ever Googled her dad.
Yeah.
That it did seem absolutely absurd.
No.
There's just so many little things in this episode that could have been done better. And I just felt like so many of them were just uncaring. Just did not care. Yeah. And on a show that I've liked so far, and I want the best for. I really want the best for this show. And I think this episode is maybe the worst episode of Picard yet.
It's also the shortest. It's like 38 minutes.
Wow. That's crazy. Yeah. It's pretty wild.
Like, I actually looked it up. It is the shortest episode that they've ever put out.
It felt like filler. It felt like all this stuff could have happened in other episodes kind of sprinkled in, you know? None of this was important.
And I'll say this. Alison Pill is a fantastic singer, if that's actually her. Mm-hmm. But that scene was awful. That scene took me out of the episode so hard. It is so ridiculous. It's like, Jesus God, we have another Uhura fan dance.
Fucking Borg Queen Ferris Bueller over here. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, she just starts singing, and the band's like, oh, I know this shit. Pat Benatar. You know,
right? Well, and that's the thing. As a musician, I'm watching it. It's like, is this realistic? And like, here's the thing. As a musician, if she started in the right key. And she started by singing a cappella the first couple lines, the band could join her. That is realistic. I watched that, and it was realistic. She would have had to start in the right key and be directly on, and then the horns join her, and then the band goes, okay, yeah. We do that kind of stuff all the time at weddings and stuff. Like, we can, someone will get up and start singing something, and we can kind of like fake our way through whatever it is. But especially if it's a standard, absolutely doable. Mm-hmm. But it was just weird. It's just weird. Like you said, it's the fan dance. Like the fan dance, there's nothing particularly illogical about it. Sure, she distracted them, but it's like, I don't know, man. I don't know.
Did they just need a reason to like have Alison Pill sing? Did they just like look at the script and say like, there has to be like, we're already running short. There has to be a big scene here that takes about 3 minutes, and we have to get the Borg Queen, we have to get endorphins so that the Borg Queen can take over. she'll sing a song. Like, what was the reasoning?
I think the idea, and this is me defending it when I don't love it. The singing didn't bother me as much as some other things in the episode, but like the idea is that the Borg Queen needs endorphins to flood her, and also the Borg Queen is trying to prove to her the kind of person she can be on Borg. You know, like come to my side of things. And it's like she's always been the shy girl in the corner, science girl, and now she's going to show her, like, look what you can do if you give me control. Look at the power we can have when we work together. And yeah, it was very strange. I hate to say it, but you're right. Fan dance all over the place. Like, feels really fan dancey.
It does.
I mean, literally, just distract everybody. Do something. I mean, different part of your body popping out of your dress this time, but like, do something to distract the crowd.
Right. I was just thinking the only thing worse that she could have done was just like let out a massive fart. Like, I would have been so angry if that happened. I would have just been like, no. No. It felt like a different show. It really did. It just, the whole thing felt like a different show. This whole episode. And I don't know that it's the director's fault or the writer's fault, or I just don't know. I am so like weirded out by how strange this episode felt. Yeah. And is it just me, or is Rafi just becoming like the person who argues against whatever they need her, someone to argue against?
She's the Worf, right?
Through the half of the series of this season, they're like, Rafi, stop, you're being reckless. And she's like, it doesn't matter. Yeah. And then they're like, we're going to go inside Picard's head. She's like, no, that's too reckless.
No, dude, she's the Worf. She always like argues the thing that they shouldn't do.
Yeah.
Maybe she'll get her first contact moment where, like, finally she says, I watched First Contact this week. On First Contact Day, someone texted me, happy First Contact Day. And so I was like, oh, right. I'm watching it. So I actually showed it to Alyssa. I put it on thinking we would fall asleep to it. And we ended up staying up the whole 2 hours and, like, loving it. And she loved it. And I was happy to show it to her.
It's a good movie.
Yeah, it was great. I love it. Same director. Very different vibe.
It's like, what if they just took the whole vibe in that one holodeck scene with Dixon Hill and just made it into an episode? But yeah, I hate feeling like this. I hate feeling like the episode was so off, but it just was. Oh, and what about like while they're like Picard's laying there and like suddenly like the doctor lady is just like, everybody out, and then like in the very like in like the next scene she comes in, she's like, okay, you can go back in. It's like, why did she even say everybody out? Like, no one was fighting or doing anything. They were just standing there. Like,
I don't know.
It didn't make any sense. None of that made any sense.
I really don't know. There's just a lot of little things to nitpick, and it just, that kind of ability to nitpick an episode like this makes it feel like someone just wasn't paying attention. It makes like feel like there's no hand on the wheel, and they just like, well, we need to get the characters from this point to this point. How do we get them there? And the other thing about like the Brent Spiner of it all, he's like laying out, he's kind of confessing through not confessing. He's confessing this thing he did, which is apparently that he created this version of this daughter whole cloth somehow.
Yeah, and he's been doing it for years.
Yeah.
With different versions, and they've been dying.
Also, how old is he? Because he had like a bunch of daughters that made it to 5 or 6 years old, and like he looks the same age still. Like, I don't know what's going on there.
Not in the pictures, though. In the pictures, they actually de-aged him. But in the video, he's like...
Right.
Which is, I guess there could have been multiple ones at the same time, though, that he was like, had sanctioned off.
Perfect Ted Cannon there. Which is incredibly sad to think that like this girl had 6 sisters that may have died, you know? Ugh, that's gross. Yeah, man, I just don't know. It just like, what I was gonna say about that is that on top of all that, they treated it like this huge reveal, but me and you said it last week because they gave enough of a clue to it in a previous episode that we're like, oh, she doesn't have a mother. Like, he's a geneticist. Of course she doesn't have a mother.
Yeah.
And like, if she doesn't have a mother, like it's just what we thought.
Yeah. Like, and it's not just us. We're not brilliant or anything.
No.
Like, it's like we and Trek Twitter have been saying this for weeks. Like,
Yeah. It's just not, it wasn't a hard thing to figure out. And then to treat it like this big revelation felt dumb. It made her look dumb for having never Googled her father before and having not solved the case that we all solved by like seeing 3 interactions between them. I don't know, man. I don't like this episode.
And look, you know, I say I'm a fan, service me. I like the references. I like they had the Nomad reference from the Changeling. I like the you know, the Roy Kirk shit. I like the, Renee talking about the shit that was in the opening credits of Enterprise that's hanging in that's all great. Wonderful. Sorry, this episode sucked. Picard's hope speech would not have convinced anybody of anything. Like, maybe it is that she just knows him somehow, and he's very charming, but like nothing he said made me feel like, you know what? If I was scared of going up in a thing, I would change my mind.
Also, I really wanted something in that conversation to touch on his need for family.
Yeah.
Like his whole arc with his family's death in the fire is that like he lost his family line. Like this family line that's so important to him. And in a way, this is one of the big moments of his family line, this first space explorer heading out into the stars. And like, I wanted him to have this connection with her and like to resonate with him as much as it did her. And instead he's just like this goofy old security guard that gives her a little very thin advice that she like goes with, you know?
Yeah, I'm like, what is this? The season finale of a CW show?
It felt that way, yeah.
Giving me a hope speech to save the day that, you know, fixes the whole season? What?
Yeah, I needed more depth out of that. I really did.
Yeah.
But that would require Renee to be a fully fleshed out character, and she's not.
She's not. They haven't spent enough time with her.
Yeah.
They're doing the new Trek thing, which is, I hate to say, and old Trek did it too. You're supposed to care because she's slightly awkward and she's somewhat neurodivergent, or she's got, you know, depression or something. You know, it's like, we all relate to that. We all know, like, yeah, I'm depressed. I'm on anxiety medication.
Right.
I don't relate to Renee. I get it. I get the notion, like, at the base level, I understand of being like, I don't know that I can perform in a very stressful situation, and I have that fear. But it's not like I care about Renee Picard.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit about Renee Picard.
Yeah.
She means nothing to me. She's like a lady who has cried like 3 times on the show, and that's all we've seen. Oh, she laughed once at a Dixon Hill. She's well-rounded. We had her laugh and we had her cry 3 times. This is bullshit, Matt.
Yeah, I agree, man. And that's why I think it would have been powerful to give her to you through the eyes of Picard and what she means to Picard. You know what I mean? Like this lineage of Picard that he's had all these years, and like, give me a couple of lines where he's talking to Talon and he's talking about how meaningful this girl was in his life, like the inspiration she was to him, and have him be the inspiration for her that she was for him. You know what I mean? Like, have her go over and be like realize her flaws and see like those flaws exist in him, and be like, there could have been so much connection there, and instead it just was like, yeah, just breathe through the, you know, whatever, and keep moving. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it just felt like really generic advice when it could have been very specific. They're both Picards that have tried to do big things, and he knows all the fear, and he's looking at a person who's doing similar stuff that what he did when he was young, but from a distant old man, like 100-year-old man looking at this distant relative and being like, I know where you are. And instead it just felt so broad in general. Everything it is. Said,
everything in this episode is very broad. But yeah, like, I feel like the current writers of Star Trek have got to stop creating generic characters and slapping a neurodivergent band-aid on it and calling it a full-blown character.
Yep, agreed.
It is like a even cheaper version of the thing they did in the 90s, where they would start a show by killing the parents, And they're just like, so you love the children automatically because they lost their mom. That is the worst thing that we could ever imagine, is losing our mom. So we feel for them and we like them immediately.
Right.
It's like every sitcom in the 90s.
Well, it's also every Disney movie ever.
Yeah.
Every Disney movie, they lose their parents.
And Batman a little bit, but well, we didn't know. We didn't know for a while that that's what happened. It wasn't until like 1940 that they said, by the way, here's the origin.
Sure.
Here's why he's a massive dick of the night. But yeah, man, I don't know. Like, I get it. I just like, I'm all for like normalizing,
neurodivergency.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm all for like normalizing talking about your mental health and, not putting a stigma on that, because everybody's got something. And Like I said, I suffer with that shit myself. So you can imagine it annoys the shit out of me when I keep seeing it being used as, a Band-Aid for bad characters.
Yeah. Agreed.
It doesn't make any sense.
And it's not like that element can't help a character, but it's like, it can't be all you have,
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm with you, man. Okay. Ignoring how bad this episode was.
Uh-huh.
What do we think about where the characters are? Like,
do we care?
Yeah, well, I don't. And that's why I'm trying to like reset us to like, okay, so maybe this next episode will be amazing, but it looks like it's going to be about Jurati going down the streets as Borg Queen. Like, what is she doing? Borg Queen has control of her body. What does that mean? Does she have nanites? Can she assimilate? What is her goal? I actually really, other than the singing thing, that it didn't bother me as much as it bothered you, but I thought it was silly. Like, I like what's happening with Jurati. I like that the Borg Queen is taking her over. I like the slow motion assimilation. I really like that.
I figured the next episode will be Jurati walking the streets as the Borg Queen, experiencing humanity, exploring what it means to be human a little bit, at the same time that Talon is exploring the streets of Picard's mind and learning what it means to be human. Unlocking things relatively at the same time in terms of pacing, because that's how television works.
What do you think they're setting up for Rios? There are a couple of interesting things this episode. He talks about how much he loves this century, kind of. He talks about he's acting all impressed with their matches and their cigars, and he's just enjoying. Like, you saw him kind of connect with the people who were being arrested last episode, and like or being deported last episode. Like, there's a lot of like connection he's having to this. He obviously has a connection to this lady in this clinic. Do you think there's something there? Are they possibly setting up him to stay? Or to be tempted to stay?
If they are not setting that up, then they're setting up a massive red herring.
Yeah.
Because I do think he will probably stay.
It'd be weird, especially if they like are trying to fix the timeline, but they leave a future guy there.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be real dumb if he stayed. I think he should want to stay and then choose not to for the sake of the timeline and deal with that later.
The only way I see him staying is if Talon sets him up to be a supervisor.
Oh, that would work.
Yeah, that could be the spinoff. Rios as a supervisor, it could be pretty cool.
That could be dope. And like the way I'm thinking is like, and maybe they don't, but they have to come up with some way of like getting rid of the current cast to some degree to give room for the TNG cast next season.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of discussion about that online. Like, I don't think that's necessarily true. Like, I think that this, so I think they're bringing in the current cast, the original cast, partially because they want everyone to go to watch the first two seasons. Here's the thing: they were smart. They paid for one like legend in the first two seasons, with a little visits from the others. And then in the third season, it looks like they're going to bring them all in. Now, by paying for them in the third season, it kind of makes all these Star Trek fans go, well, I want to know what's going on. So everyone's going to go get Paramount Plus and watch all those seasons and maybe like it, maybe they don't. Maybe they watch the new Stargazer spinoff or the Supervisor spinoff or whatever, you know? Mm-hmm. I love the idea of a Stargazer spinoff, by the way. I really do. I know I just talked about the Rios thing in the past, but I would like to see Rios on the Stargazer.
You know what would be fun? If what they did was they leave Rios in the past and he becomes a assignment Earth agent or whatever, supervisor, but then they get back and Rios is there, like that version of Rios still exists, so they're doing like Stargazer movies and an assignment Earth spinoff. With two different versions of Rios.
He is probably my favorite new character. I like Rios a lot.
I enjoy him. He's fun.
It'd be really fun if they also did a Fenris Rangers spinoff and then it's Raffi and Seven. They're out fighting in the La Sirena, and they've got the 7 members of the crew are their holograms of Rios. So you've got him on 3 different shows as a main cast member.
He just becomes Wolverine of the Star Trek universe.
Yes.
Like
Exactly.
He's in every comic that the company produces.
It's like, I don't think he's that popular that he'd have to be that, but like...
He was in the 90s. Rios.
No, I mean Rios. Yeah, I'm talking about Rios. Wolverine absolutely has been and was through the entirety of the run of the Fox X-Men movies. He's the one they kept going back to, you know? Oh, man. Well, anything else you thought about this episode that you want to point out?
Let's see. Oh, the Rios initial fake ID said Carl Leonard Kelly.
Who's that?
Who was a 60-year-old heart surgeon from the South. That was a reference to Leonard McCoy and Carl Urban and DeForest Kelly.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. Let's see. Was there anything else I cared about? Oh yeah, Talon had the servo thing, the little sonic screwdriver that Gary Seven had.
Yes.
That was cool. I liked that.
That was cool.
Like I said, I love some fan service, but this episode sucked ass. Yep. I'm sorry.
I'm with you.
It just did.
Yeah.
I was like, man, Matt's gonna love that musical number. and I'm gonna look like an asshole for being like, screw that shit.
No, man. To be fair, I don't hate the musical number as much as you did, but like, man, I
just felt like she did a fantastic job.
Sure,
she was really good. If that was her actually singing, but the whole thing just took me out. But yeah, I was like, man. That's what I was like at the very beginning when we first started recording. I was like, man, I'm so glad you didn't like it. I hate being the one who doesn't like the thing.
No, I get that, man. I really do.
Not enough to back down.
Right. You're not going to change your opinion, but like, it does suck to be the one. It sucks to be the Debbie Downer on any podcast.
Yeah. I'm open. Yeah. I'm open to changing my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I just watch it a few different times, like that's happened with a bunch of stuff that I've watched. Like, one of my favorite movies, Life Aquatic. I love that movie now.
Yeah.
Hated it the first like 2 or 3 times I watched it.
Interesting. I love that movie too. Oh, well, I don't have much to say. I really don't love the idea of Talon going into Picard's brain in the next episode.
It does seem like a very overused trope, doesn't it?
Oh, for sure. I mean, they even say it like it's going to be like a mind meld. It's kind of like a jerry-rigged mind meld. I just really want the story to move forward, and this feels like another reason that I don't understand for them to like, hey, let's stop here. Now, if we're going to be really charitable, it could be that we really get to explore all these visions that Picard's having. I think we're going to get to explore that and find out what's really going on inside his brain.
I feel bad because I'm not interested in it. I just want to get it over with.
That's a bummer. I'm interested in what Picard's thinking about. Like, I mean, this is about his character, so I'm interested in about that. I want it to be something interesting, you know?
Well, this time in the Flash, there looked like there was, I don't know what it looked like. It looked like some kind of damn Hellraiser type of character doing something.
Yeah, it did. And
so I don't know.
It's got to be visions of something that isn't real. Like, he's combining all his experiences of the Borg and of his mother, and all his trauma is sort of combining this ball of Picard trauma.
Well, I mean, we saw his mother in TNG, and she was older. Like, it wasn't like, we know that she had issues with with his dad. His dad was a dick and a half, like Robert.
Yeah.
And I do suspect, as I've said before, that Patrick Stewart is trying to bring in, stuff about his own like shell shock dad, dad who his father who had PTSD and was abusive.
Yeah.
And I know that he has, felt guilt for not realizing that his dad had PTSD. He just thought his dad was a dick for a long time. Mm-hmm. So, there's a window there.
There can absolutely be a powerful story about like understanding your parents and understanding where they were coming from and understanding your own trauma and how like your parents were just people. Like there's a lot of rich story there. Like I'm okay with it. I kind of feel like it's a little, I don't know. We know so much about the Picard character that I want resolved, like the fact that his whole thing about his family and his family line, and then they had this opportunity this episode and they just blew past it.
Which they might still tap into.
Sure. Absolutely.
If he goes back and is because they've said that they don't have like records for that time. He knew his, ancestor was an astronaut, but he didn't know much about her.
Right.
So, like, if we go back and, like, she has dealt with the same bullshit that my entire family has dealt with, basically. Mm-hmm. Like, even Picard, like, when you look at his death wish in Tapestry and getting stabbed in the heart, and you see, like, his sort of flippancy towards life, and then what that, his maturity turned into, like, sort of a, his own version of, melancholy. Which was most of TNG, the way he presented himself very sternly, but would like kind of hang out and sit and stare out the window and play a flute and shit,
There's also like, I think there's something to be said for his fear of intimacy, which I think they're playing with Laris clearly. Like his fear of being with Laris. Why does he fear family so much? And why did he push Beverly away? Why did he push Laris away? And I think part of that is his childhood trauma of seeing how his dad treated his mom. And now he doesn't want to become that. Mm-hmm. So he doesn't want to be, and he knows that he can be a cold asshole. He's been that to many children on the Enterprise. And like, he doesn't want to be that guy. Like, he's not a family man. It's not what he has a passion for, but he also misses that part of his life that he just completely missed out on. You know what I mean? And he's really scared to become his dad, I think. And I'm wondering if that's what we're going to be tapping into in these last few episodes.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, that's a heady thing to try to tackle on this lasers and spaceship show.
Man, they can do it well. We've seen them do shit like this well.
Absolutely.
Or Star Trek.
Believe me, I was just joking. I fully, that I love when they tackle the big stuff.
But now, as we are getting into our hopes for what they will do, I fear that we have gotten to a place where once again, we have written a better show than they actually will present, and we will be disappointed.
That's what pisses me off so much is when you're sitting around doing these shows, they have writers' rooms. That to me, a writer's room is doing what we're doing. Like you bounce around ideas like, oh, that works well. Uh-huh. What can we do with that? And then you follow that down the rabbit hole until you realize what you can do with it. Then you move on to the next thing if that doesn't work. Like you try things, you try to see how they fit together. And we do this here on the show. We take elements they've already got and we're like, okay, where are they going? And sometimes we come to these really cool character beats that we're like, that would be great. And they don't do them. And I'm like, and then they do something so much dumber. And I'm like, there's just nothing there. It's like they did not do what we're doing now. There's no care put into these shows sometimes. And it pisses me off. Pisses me off royally.
Yeah. That's our kind of fan entitlement on this show. We don't care if it's woke. We're just pissed that it's not well written.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I just want it to be well written.
Give me a reason to wake up.
Yeah, exactly. Give me a reason to wake up.
Because now I've watched this episode and I was like, I should have stayed in bed.
Well, did you see episode 2 of Moon Knight yet?
Oh yeah, I watched it last night.
That's a good reason to wake up right there. Woo!
Yeah, I did. I watched it last night.
Really loved episode 2 of Moon Knight.
And they got Mr. Knight in there and everything.
Mr. Knight was so good.
He was
so good.
He was fantastic. I wish he'd been a better fighter like he was in the comics, but
I think he'll get there. Yeah? I just absolutely. I think it's just I hope so. It's the first outing,
I hope so.
I loved it so much.
And I wonder if they're going to bring Jake in, his third personality, who's a taxi driver.
Right. I think there's more than 3 as well. There's like 5 or 6.
Well,
in the
they're
comics.
like, there are like 3 primary though that they like. But it's like, well, Khonshu is one because like actually some comics, Khonshu is actually a part of his disorder and it's not real.
Right. Yeah. So, well, I think that the way I've always understood it is there's just always a question of whether it's real or not, you know?
Before we started, Bethany was like, what is Moon Knight? And I was like, what is his deal? And I was like, he's basically an honest version of Batman. It's like a dark Avenger of the night who recognizes he has DID. That's the issue. Like,
totally see it. Ugh. Well, regardless of hating this episode, we only got 4 left. I'm very hopeful these will be a good 4 episodes, and I'm really excited for next season and then bringing all these people back.
Yeah,
just do it with care, guys. Do it with care, please.
Handle me with care.
Yes, please. All right, that's all I got. Joel Untrue.
Live long and prosper.
Thank you for listening to the Star Trek Universe Podcast, a Stranded Panda production. If you'd like to hear more from David C. Robertson, check out the DC On Screen podcast or maladjusted.tv for his web videos. If you'd like to hear more from Matthew Carroll, check out the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast or listen to his music. Just search for Matthew Carroll anywhere you get music.